Here we go. Moving on, let's watch this short message from our sponsor, Delivering Asia. A big round of applause for our sponsor. Now we're going to hear from our ARIS chairperson who will share his global perspectives for the Asia-Pacific region. Please welcome Value Management Specialist and Sustainability Advocate, Managing Director, Quantum, Stephen Oehme.
Thank you. Thanks, Tina. And today has just been absolutely fantastic. I have been lucky enough to be the chairperson of ARIS. This is my 5th year. And it has been an amazing journey. And today has been absolutely fantastic. And it's really, really good to be here. Last year, I've had to visit by video feed because I was helping the United Nations with COP28 in Dubai. And we're having a panel session later on about the Middle East. And the talk I'm giving today is about perspectives from Asia, from a global perspective. Back in 2020, my first time with ARIS, the subject was the spirit of innovation, and we very heavily focused on sustainability that year. It's always been a topic, has been for the last 10 years with ARIS, but we really, really focused on sustainability in ways which were prophetic because, as you've seen from every single speaker, every single panelist, the word sustainability comes up, but it's more than just the word. It's really now the actions, what people are actually doing, etc. And there's a lot of myth busting that we started doing now 5 years ago in relation to sustainability and the built environment. And I'm going to touch in on that because I think it's hugely important for the shaping and our vision of future cities. The following year, we focused on adaptive reinvention. And of course, that was in 2022. And we were emerging from COVID. And so, of course, being adaptive from that very unexpected and dynamic situation was hugely important for us. And it was a huge focus for us. The following year, last year, powering communities, and I think many of you were with us last year. And of course, it's fantastic being here at ARIS because when I think back of these years, there's been hundreds of speakers, literally, and thousands of people that have been engaged with PropertyGuru and the Asia Real Estate Summit and all of the publications and all of the things that PropertyGuru do throughout the year. I mean, it really is a fantastic driver of so much in Asia and beyond. And there's a lot of activities that the team are doing globally and a big focus on the Middle East as well, which is really excellent. And then, of course, we've got this year, which is the shaping. Oh, sorry, I'm actually one slide out. I'm sorry, I'm looking. So I apologise for that. So apologies for that. And then, so the parent communities I just covered, I apologise. And then we've got the shaping aspiration of future cities, which is where we are today. And the presentations, the panels have been truly excellent. It really, really is fantastic. So what is shaping What is shaping our industry? What is shaping our future? Obviously, population is going to be a very, very big factor. This is from the United Nations. You can see the shaded area in there, which is the 95% confidence level that the United Nations have for what our future projection of population will be globally. And as you can see, it's going to be, in the next 15, 20 years, around about 11 billion people, etc. That is a lot more people than we have today. But then you can also see that it's starting to flatten out. But the next 15 years or so are going to be very, very dynamic and are going to drive a lot of what we must do, what we must think about, what we must consider, and the actions that we must take here in Asia and globally. But it's not just about population growth, of course. There are a few other really key factors. One is, and this is in our history now, that in 2005 was the crossover point for when there was more people living in urban environments than living in rural environments. So that was now, well, 2005, it's basically 20 years ago that that's happened. And of course, that's driven a lot of change in Asia and all over the world, and it is continuing to do so in many, many ways. It's a huge factor. So one of the things that, we look and we talk back, the last panel session was about looking back at how cities were done, et cetera, and of course cities were done extremely well 200 years ago, and they were done very differently to the way that we do them now. And in many ways, we are taking the lessons from those decades and 100 years and more ago. We are taking those back on board, and we're able to do that because of technology, because of the way that we can now work, which we weren't able to do even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Pre-COVID, we couldn't do that. So the dynamic of the change in urban and rural populations is the changeover point happened nearly 20 years ago, but the acceleration of that is really happening now. And especially post-COVID, and also now that we're very clear of COVID, new work practices and everything else are being accepted, are being worked in as now the new normal, not just new. And so therefore that's a really, really dynamic factor. And of course, another really big picture dynamics is in relation to the age of populations. And everywhere around the world, we are seeing that there are less young people and there are more older people. And so therefore, of course, that's a huge, huge driver for how we have to look at what's going to happen in our future. And of course, when we're thinking about future cities, we're talking about next year, 2025, as much as we are about 2030, 2035, 2040, etc. So it's very interesting. Putting that together in, what do these dynamics mean? How do they interrelate? How do we need to think about them? This chart here is a very confusing, but an illustrative dynamic of where people are moving to, etc. And so we've heard today, and we've heard over ARIS over many years about how important the human and social side of business is for attracting talent, for retaining talent, for growing talent within businesses. But there's a really much bigger picture than that. We are doing that at community levels, we're doing that at city levels, we're doing that at regional levels, country levels, etc., etc. And the transportability of people is not only just between companies, and not only just between rural and urban areas, but now, more than ever before, it's between countries and regions. And of course, all of us in the room, we just need to look at how many of us are from different places around the world and where we are choosing to make our lives. And for many of us, me included, people ask me, where am I based? And I'm not able to give them a very clear answer to that because I'm very portable and really enjoying that. And this statistic here, United Nations again, is about where are the migrants and where are they living. And of course, in previous decades, Asia was a place where people left Asia to go and migrate to another country. Now we're seeing a reverse of that. And of course, that's a very, very important and very, very interesting factor. And it's accelerating. Look at Europe and Asia, almost level. which is incredible. It was never, ever like that. And of course, we all know that that type of migration in Europe is going to reduce, reduce, reduce. And in Asia, it's going to increase, increase, increase. How do we relate that to the built environment? Well, this is the statistics of billions of square metres of real estate property all over the world. And if you look at the 2015 figures, the blue ones, and then you look at the grey ones, the 2050 figures, it's basically a doubling of the square metres globally. So in some ways, you know, we look at some cities and we think about what's happening and what's going to happen in the future, and we sort of think, oh, well, you know, this city is at its maximum, or it's really well developed now, how much further can it go, et cetera, et cetera. But in relation to global terms and in relation to regional terms, Asia, Middle East, and many other regions, the amount of growth that's going to happen is in the future. It hasn't happened, it's not happening now, it's in the future. Probably in the very, very near future, and we are, of course, seeing that. As Tina mentioned, I'm come from a value management perspective, and a lot of people ask me, you know, what does value management mean? And in the past, we've always been driven by cost. So if you sort of said, what is the value of this building? It would be the cost of the land, the cost of construction, the cost of interest, some profit, and that's its value. That's now changed in every single discussion we've had for years, and including today. Now, value is what we create by looking at something holistically, strategically, and making sure that we're following something like this, where we've got the cost, the price, and the value, and they're very disconnected things. And the smarter and more holistic and cleverer we are, the better and higher value we have. And then you relate that back to global migration and local regional migration, et cetera, you can see just how fundamentally important it is to focus on value and not be stuck in cost. And it's a huge change in mindset, and it's a huge change in outcomes as well. In the past, and we've heard about this for over many, many years, longer than a decade, probably nearly 20 years, the value add for real estate was transit-orientated development. You know, that was a really important driver, and I fully agree with that. It really is. It's really important. But in the overall scheme of things, it's just one element of adding value and being strategic and being clever. And, you know, so this particular article talks about 6 ways. And of course, when you start to think about it, there's not just 6 ways, there's many more than that. And the next slide, for example, there are 9 elements. And then when you start to look at those 9 elements, then you'll start to sort of say, well, hold on, there's actually more benefits for TOD, for transit-orientated development, than just 6 ways or 9 factors, etc. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I want to relate that to the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and when you look at all of those, people in the real estate industry don't really relate their activities and what they're doing to those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's kind of a step away. But when you actually start looking at these in some detail, you actually realise that you're actually already doing many of these in many different ways. At a building level, say one residential tower, or at a mixed development level, or at a larger precinct level within a city, or at a city level, at a country level, etc. And it's really, really important that we start to make not a more haphazard, but more direct connection with the Sustainable Development Goals and what we do. Because when we're separating that cost and value equation, a lot of the value will actually come by being more deliberate in relation to our focus on those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I'd like to build on that a little bit further. Last year, as I mentioned, I did the address for ARIS from Dubai, because I was helping the United Nations at COP28. And on Friday last week, I left Baku and I was helping the United Nations for COP29 there. And of this United Nations event, so obviously they're very focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and very focused on climate change, etc., etc. in some ways, what does that have to do to relate to the real estate industry and actionable things that we need to do today, tomorrow, and in 2025? Well, the talks at COP28 and COP29 and the ones that will happen in Brazil in 2025, they're not just the talks that happen over those 2 weeks. And in Dubai, over 80,000 people came from all over the world, governments, NGOs, corporations, individuals, all sorts of organisations. Over 80,000 people and over 70,000 people in Baku last month. And they are there not just to do the talks for those 2 weeks, but they are also there to exchange and meet up with all the other people from all the other regions and countries, etc., to discuss not just the climate change agenda, but the whole sustainability agenda. And it is a major, major driving force. The reason that you've heard from every single speaker and every single panelist about sustainability is because it is one of the biggest factors that's going to drive change, innovation, and success at every level, physically, geographically, cities, countries, and also on the individual project level in the real estate industry. So it's an enormous differentiator. If you get it right, there is real value there. If you get it wrong, you can really, really suffer. Some context for this, as many of you know, I was on the board for the Burj Khalifa. That opened in 2010, so that's now 15 years ago. It's still the tallest building in the world, but it won't be for too much longer. There will be taller buildings. But when we're talking about cost and value, a lot of people speak to me about the Burj Khalifa and they sort of say, Stephen, you're involved in sustainability. How can you justify a tall building like this? Well, and there are many, many reasons why I can and I do that. We did do some energy efficiency measures. We did some clever things with water, et cetera, et cetera. We did do some very smart engineering, technical things. But also from a human and a social point of view, from an overall sustainability point of view, I was involved in the tower, and the tower by itself was a huge financial success. But even if it hadn't been, it sat within a whole precinct of 138 plots of land. And not all of them, but most of those plots have a view to the Burj Khalifa. They are in walkable distance to what was the largest shopping centre in the world. It's got the beautiful lake and fountains, beautiful entertainment districts, sporting facilities. It's got now a tram system. It's connected to the metro. There's 100,000 people that live there. It was an enormous financial success, enormous. But in addition to that, people are walking to work. They're walking to the shops. It totally redefined not only where the centre of Dubai was, because it became the centre of Dubai, but it redefined how people lived and worked in Dubai, how they considered and perceived Dubai, etc., etc. I've been very fortunate to be involved in many projects around the world that have had this sort of impact, and I've put a couple of them in here. But sustainability is not just about energy and water. It's not just about financial sustainability, it's also about those human and social connections. And so when we're looking about shaping the future of our cities, it's very important that we really focus in on the human and the social sides of sustainability as well. And this development did that. And once you start pointing it out and people actually start experiencing this place, and now there's an opera house there, and now there's all these other facilities and a quality of life that just did not exist in the Middle East at all. And now is flourishing everywhere. It's because of developments. It's because of our vision of the future and then creating that. Another driver of what happens in cities and how we need to think about our cities and developments, etc., is sporting facilities. I was actually involved in both of these developments. The large stadium is the Melbourne Cricket Ground, a 100,000-seat stadium. I was involved in that for the opening of the Commonwealth Games in 2006. Terrific development. And then the little one was actually a project that was designed for 25,000 people. And I was engaged to have a look at that from a value management perspective. And I looked at it, and with basically exactly the same design, but reconfiguring it a little bit, we were able to convert it from 25,000 to what was actually built, 30,000. And it cost less than 2% more. And we made it more sustainable in some technology ways included in that 2%. So it was almost free to increase the capacity by 20%. And so I'm therefore challenging once again that difference between cost and value and how you get there. And a lot of people, when we're talking about sustainability, they say, it'd be really good to be sustainable, but we can't afford it. The last panel they were discussing, and it was terrific to hear, and I know because these people are doing it, they're actually achieving it, is they're doing sustainability and they're utilising local materials, which are cheaper. They're using simpler materials, which are cheaper. And it's a lot more sustainable. And also it looks beautiful. It's innovative. Everything about it is positive, and they're saving money. Sustainability is not about we don't have budget. Sustainability is about being smart and actioning that in a holistic way. You will always save money and be more sustainable. This project opened for the World Cup in 22. Interestingly, Saudi Arabia has just been announced that they're going to be doing it in 34. This hotel won the sustainability awards, etc. But it's another development. I was the startup project director for this. This is another development which is changing where the centre of Doha, Qatar is. And it's their equivalent of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. It's their iconic symbol. It's actually the building shape is the crest of Qatar. And these types of projects have more than just bricks and mortar. They're more than just a sustainability award. They're shaping their future communities, which is our topic for today. And another project also happens to be in Qatar. It's actually a military facility, 385 buildings. This remit for here, talking about value, they didn't want it to be more valuable in sales price. It's a military facility. They wanted to save cost. Their cost at the time was over $6 billion US. We were able to save $1 billion, so it was 20%. The building was in construction. And 385 buildings, we saved $1 billion. We made it more energy efficient, water efficient, biodiversity, all of those environmental sustainability considerations. We saved all of that money, but we also looked at human and social sides, education facilities, arts facilities, language facilities, all sorts of other activities in a military base. So when I say it was more sustainable, I'm talking about more sustainable over all 4 sustainability pillars: environmental, human, social, and financial. And shaping communities, I just wanted to make that connection to the past history. I was very pleased to be involved again with the Qatari government, the Sovereign Wealth Fund there for the Raffles Hotel in Singapore, which we reopened in 2022 after 3 years of renovation, not just for the hotel, but for the whole precinct. And it's another way of celebrating heritage, celebrating culture, excellent service levels, some of the best that Asia has to offer, or a reflection of the great qualities that Asia has, etc., is seen in Raffles Hotel. It was a wonderful project to be involved with, hugely successful financially, sustainability-wise, on a human and social perspective, fantastic. Environmental was also really good, and financially wonderful project. Really, really great. We have in the past had the real estate industry has been very materialistic and very commercial. We've heard from a lot of our speakers that we're all wanting to shift away from that. The last panel where we're talking about who wouldn't want to have a smaller, beautiful, comfortable home, and then with the money that one has saved, be able to have all sorts of other experiences and other elements in our life and in our lifetimes. Everybody would want that. And it's the transition of the real estate industry from things to experiences, and we can see that in all of the branded residences and other residential developments, office buildings, co-working spaces, the retail, everything's about retail experience. It's not about bricks and mortar anymore. That shift is huge. We've also spoken about affordable housing. And what does affordable housing mean? Does it mean cheap housing? And of course, it's a whole lot more than that. It's about what do we want to afford. So the tiny homes that Colin speaks about, etc., is all about that. And it's very interesting what the definition is for affordable housing and where people are spending their money and what percentage of income and how that's going to shape our design decisions and considerations, etc. It's very, very interesting. We need to take this on board really cleverly and interestingly. And there were some very good comments made earlier today in relation to if we don't have a whole community in a city, if we don't have a whole community, it's not going to be successful. And the point that was made by the gentleman earlier and sort of saying in Asia, that's kind of natural, that you don't just have a rich city, you have everybody. That was a really, really good and interesting point because it's so correct. In Asia, it doesn't happen in the West like that. It's a beautiful thing in Asia. And artificial intelligence, of course, we focused on that a couple of years ago at ARIS. Of course, some things that we thought were going to take 5 and 6 and 7 and 10 years are actually happening in 2 and 3 years. It's amazing. But AI is a tool. I really agree with what was said earlier. For every advantage and opportunity, there is a risk and a challenge. With AI, it's a tool. It's very, very interesting. Our industry has been looking at this for a long time with BIM and with digital twins and everything else. It's a very, very interesting area. How we utilise this is shaping our future. And I already spoke about value and how I differentiate that from cost. And so here we've had this value engineering, which is basically a cost-cutting mindset. So we do something and then we cut costs. And as you can see from the arrows there on the left-hand side, we kind of are reducing the value when we're reducing the cost. And then if we do value design, which the last panel would call it, or value management as I would call it, and we look at it from the beginning, it's a different mindset and it's very rewarding and it's absolutely essential that that happens. So in relation to the cities of the future, I mean, is artificial intelligence going to bring us closer together, or are we going to be physically closer together in small apartments, but a million miles from each other because we don't mix, etc., etc.? That's not what's going to happen. We're building buildings with 10 stories of car park below us, but we all know that in 5 or 10 years, nobody's going to own those cars. The way that we're going to have mobility is going to be totally different everywhere in the world. We need to think about things very, very differently and holistically, very strategically. The vision of future cities is not what will happen. It's what we think about and actually do. So what we do at work this month and in January and February and March and everything else, that's the vision for the future. It's what we do. Thanks very much.